West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël.
The man who worked as police commissioner in New York City under then Mayor Rudy Giuliani, a man named Bernie Kerik, who really did lead New York City police until he himself pled guilty to 8 felonies and served years in federal prison. Bernie Kerik, who naturally is part of this whole mess on the Trump side, he has not only agreed that he will testify to the January 6th investigation next week, he has produced what Politico describes as a, quote, trove of documents to the investigation. A trove of documents that includes this 22-page strategic communications plan that's dated December 27th. You see the subhead there in red. We have 10 days to execute this plan and certify President Trump. It's not really a plan. It's basically a set of talking points. But this is what they say is their talking points message targeted to, quote, everyone. You cannot let America itself be stolen by criminals. You must take a stand, and you must take it today. But here's the really interesting part. He also handed over what his lawyer is calling a privilege log. Now, privilege log is a real thing in court proceedings when somebody who's part of a court proceeding has to hand something over, but something can't be handed over because of the type of document it is, because it is implicated in, it implicates the attorney-client privilege or some other privilege that should shield it from being handed over to the court. Privilege logs are a real thing. Privilege logs don't look like this. What Bernie Kerik produced is his, quote, privilege log. This is like the bazooka bubblegum wrapper cartoon version of a privilege log. But it is Mr. Kerik's explanation to the January 6th investigators of what he is not handing over to them and why. He has given them a trove of documents. He's not given them everything they've asked for. This is his privilege log that explains why they're not getting some of the things that he has. And it's not a document that overall inspires confidence. Literally, here's Kerik's description of one of the things he says he's not handing over to the investigation, because he says it's protected by attorney-client privilege. This is how Kerik describes that document. Type of document, reports prepared by volunteer third parties for the Trump legal team. Basis for withholding, retained by the Trump legal team in anticipation of litigation. Date, 28 November 2020, addressees, Giuliani. And then the title of the document being withheld on this basis, quote, compilation of rants. This one is a little more worrying, though. Basis for withholding. Documents drafted and or edited by attorney. Date, December 17th, 2020. Type of document, draft POTUS letter, meaning draft of a letter from the President of the United States. But look at the subject matter of that document, which again, Bernie Kerik says he is not handing over. Quote, draft letter from POTUS to seize evidence in the interest of national security for the 2020 elections. A draft letter to be released by then President Trump, written for him by an attorney, a letter explaining or announcing that he is seizing evidence for the 2020 elections under some national security guise. You know, we had previously seen reference in the January 6th investigation to a draft executive order prepared for Trump related to the election, related to so-called election integrity. We had previously seen Trump advisors, including his former national security advisor, Mike Flynn, recommending that Trump should use the military to go seize ballots, seize elections machinery, declare martial law. But now, from Bernie Kerik, of all people, we've got this new revelation. A lawyer of some stripe drafting a letter for Trump about seizing evidence related to the election. Again, this dated mid-December 2020. And Bernie Kerik says he has this document, but doesn't want to hand it over. What do we expect that will happen next? Joining us now is Nicholas Wu. He's a congressional reporter for Politico. He was first to report that Bernie Kerik had handed over documents to the January 6th investigation. Mr. Wu, thanks very much for making time to be here tonight. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you.
So first of all, let me ask if I've gotten any of that wrong, or if there's anything important that I've missed out in terms of what you know from your reporting, what we've learned about what Mr. Kerik has handed over to the committee.
Well, Rachel, that draft letter that you brought up just now, the timing of that and the date on it is what is most interesting. So that's dated December 17th, 2020. And that's a day before Trump held an Oval Office meeting with Mike Flynn and Sidney Powell and other Trump world allies about ways to potentially seize election machines and other things that Trump saw as proof of fraud in the election. And so it's unclear exactly if these two are linked, but I mean, that's quite a coincidence with the timing.
In terms of the sort of nature of these documents and the likelihood that they'll ever see the light of day, obviously Mr. Kerik has described this document about, again, a draft letter for the president about seizing evidence. We don't know more about it than that. But he's described it but not produced it, saying that it is protected by attorney-client privilege because it was drafted by a lawyer. Do we know anything about how the committee is handling that kind of an assertion? Mr. Kerik identifying that the document exists, but saying that it won't be handed over, that it's protected from this kind of inquiry.
Right. So Kerik's lawyer has gone back and forth with the committee on this and trying to testify to them, trying to find some sort of conditions that would make it amenable, both for Kerik to come and testify before the committee and for them to release documents, trying to figure out what could be redacted, what is not privileged, and the like. The bigger question there is, what exactly would allow Kerik to come and testify before them? He said before that he would be interested in complying with the committee. They just have concerns about the format of it, whether it be public and the like. But right after we published this story, Kerik's lawyer said that the agreement with the committee to come in for an interview seemed to have fallen apart, and the committee wanted to do a deposition instead on the 13th. Now, this is something that Kerik's lawyer and Kerik have opposed previously because they don't see the committee as being able to hold a deposition for various technical reasons. And so, this is part of the back and forth here between Kerik and the committee, and we'll see that play out over the next week as we get closer to that deadline to actually come in for an interview.
It is Tuesday, the 4th of January of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Did you know that a small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world? It always has, and it always will. All right, enough of the spice trade. We got a lot more going on in the world. Maybe the result of it all will be historically the same, but maybe we might be able to throw a few cogs in the wheel. Wait a second. Cogs in the wheel? Well, you know what I mean. We need to, break up the machinery of this authoritarian endeavor. I will not be ground into the earth under the iron boot of these Nazis. I refuse. And we all should. Boy. All right. Well, we got our work cut out for us. You know, January 6th is in just a couple of days. They will be celebrating. You know that. And they'll have some sort of somber memorial to their martyrs. And we will, we'll mourn the deaths and injury to the Capitol cops and the D.C. cops and all the others who were protecting the seat of democracy that day. So, it's like both sides. They mourn theirs, we mourn ours. It's all the same. At least that's what it says in the paper. Actually, though, that New York Times editorial board piece that came out, that for the first time, I don't know, did Dean Baskett, is he around anymore? I guess not. But I know he has nothing to do with the editorial board, but still. It's all of the same flavor. Yes, the editorial board came out and actually called a few things what they are and pointed some fingers where fingers needed to be pointed at. So, I guess maybe because they're being sued by Project Veritas to give up the goods that they never had to give up from the Pentagon Papers. Think of that. A propaganda shop like Project Veritas, breaking the law, coming into possession of stolen property from the president's daughter, property that happens to be her diary. All right. And because the Times reported that, Project Veritas is going to sue or has sued the New York Times, and a Federalist Society judge ruled in Project Veritas's favor in spite of the journalistic and legal precedent set from the Pentagon Papers. Yes, I think that we need to dig deep and start purging all these Federalist Society and Heritage Foundation judges that have corroded from inside our judicial operation. I know it's the morning. I need more coffee. So, yes, we have a story coming up about a Federalist Society judge ruling in some odd way. We consider it odd. They consider it to be, I don't know. They keep calling themselves patriots and Americans, and I think they've just co-opted the term. Because I don't think they actually know what that means. They've assigned meaning. A true blue American of original intent is a landowner and has slaves, apparently, disregarding the fact that not everybody was a slaveholder. Or slave owner. You had to kind of be a landowner to be able to do things in our political system at the time, but still. We don't get to hear enough of the fact that it really was about a third who said, yeah, I want to put some human beings under my thumb, not pay them a dime, house them in inferior housing, and work them to death while separating their families. We'll just take the babies. Or, the toddlers. They're still babies. They think that is what it means to be an American. Whereas, the rest of us are in these lofty ideals of equal protection, due process for all, to each his own ability. I guess they think that's communism. And yet, the men, and it was primarily men, of course, you got to understand there were quite a few women involved there too, but they usually had to have a beard, get their message out. But these were people of the Enlightenment. All right? That doesn't mean that they became suddenly aware because of the Dark Ages. There's no such thing as the Dark Ages, anyway. But there was a quite an extended period of anti-science major superstition running even our political and filling up the potholes of the day was predicated upon superstition. Religious decree, which is the same, superstition. Create a law, decree it, and it's all based on superstition. And the people of the Enlightenment said, hey, we should have an age of reason. All this other stuff is just so unreasonable. It doesn't make any sense. In fact, it puts us in harm's way, if not actually being harmed. During the plague, and you see these pictures of these black-robed guys or people, mostly guys, and they have like a really long beaked bird mask on. You know what that is? That's a surgical mask of the day. I'm serious. Because of the plague. They want to breathe that air. Masks don't work. Well, what about this? They were wearing masks back during the plague. Yeah. It doesn't have to make sense to them. It's everything that is transactional in this moment. I want what I want, and I want it now. And if I don't get it, and you're in my way, woe be to you. Now that's the construct. That's the behavior. That is what a warlord government is. Trickle down. Everybody's a warlord in his own house. Yeah, you know how that works. It's not necessarily like, dad comes and kicks mom, and then mom kicks the kid, and then the kid kicks the dog, and then the dog goes and chases the cat. Go on and on and on. But it's sort of like that. You bring the sentiments from the greater society into your domicile, and woe be to you. This is where we are. Incivility is what is considered to be an alpha male trait. Being a total dick makes you an alpha male. As if that's supposed to be a good thing. Once again, let's define our terms. My idea of an alpha male is not one who's kicking everybody around him to get what they want. My idea of an alpha male is that they've evolved in all aspects. And one of the biggest aspects is that I am blessed to have this. And there are people who are in very dire need. Why not pool our abilities to help all of us rather than just me? And if you wanted to get the concept of self-interest in there, we can do that. Because the more people that fail, the harder it is for all of us, strong elites to be able to get along, get ahead. There's a fly problem when there's corpses out in the street. Maybe you don't want people dying. All right? So I guess we could get the self-interest in there. The noblesse oblige aren't doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. It's just that they have, the foresight to know there's a bunch of people dead. There's going to be a big fly problem, and you can't have that. Some people think you can, and you should, but no, try it sometime. It's not good. Ew. Icky. So, I'll repeat, we have our work cut out for us. We not only have to come out in massive numbers to vote, but we better be damn well prepared. They have a lot of weaponry. Let's just remember how Mussolini rose. In a very similar fashion of what the Republicans have been doing in this long game. I say that they adopted the Soviet 70-year strategy or the 70-year plan for their own nefarious ends, and it's very right-wing. Of course, we know that. They're fascists. But if you look at the invention and rise of fascism in fascist Italy with the titular head of Mussolini, you'll think we were talking about what's been going on with the Republican Party in the United States of America and how irrevocably to the right they have pushed us, to the point that Chris Matthews says that we're going too left. We can't even get to just barely the right of Eisenhower, and they're calling us too left, you commie. Well, they called Eisenhower a commie anyway. Oh, you're going to make an interstate highway system for everybody? You're a commie. Yeah, well, we needed an ability to truck war supplies across the continent. Are you happy now? Oh, it was for war? Well, that's okay then. Commie. Okay. It's Tuesday. We'll get on a roll later. We do have the curated part of the show, which we curate for not only your, enlightenment, but, center us here in the salon because, we need a little bit of centering. Well, Rachel broke it down. Yes, she did at the top about the materials given to the January 6th committee by Kerik, including a mention of a draft letter from Trump to seize evidence in the interest of national security for the 2020 elections. All right. Sounds like a smoking gun to me. On the rest of the menu, a Federalist Society judge, see, I told you, who blocked the ACA, yeah, that one, has now blocked the Pentagon from punishing a group of Navy SEALs who refused the COVID-19 vaccine because they say it's a religious thing. We're religious. Yeah, shut up. You're a Navy SEAL. I don't get it. The military is supposed to have the ability to exact their punishment because of readiness, and a Federalist Society judge says no. All right. We'll see how long that works out. An investigation of journalists by a Trump Customs and Border Protection Unit is under review. Better be. And NASA's new space telescope is on the verge of completing the riskiest part of its mission after ground controllers fixed a pair of problems. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the Haitian prime minister survived a weekend assassination attempt. And a weekend fire ravaged South Africa's 138-year-old Parliament complex. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of that chat room link, across the page, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really helps us in so many ways. And foremost, of course, is the ever-increasing bills. How dare they? And the continuous upgrade of hardware and software. How dare they? And, yes, so if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds to us once a month, that really helps us pay our bills, fly under the radar, and continue this powerhouse of resistance against, really, its powerful forces arrayed against the United States of America and all that it stands for. I mean, the good things it stands for, okay? They're not arrayed against the bad things. That's what they want. But we don't want them to put the bad things on us and make us live under that yoke. So we thank you for your generosity in allowing us to raise our voice against it and, give you a little bit of information and what might be an entertaining style. Might be. But we need the help because this... man, we don't have a Peter Thiel throwing money at us, okay? So, and we wouldn't want it anyway. Not from Peter Thiel. God, that guy. Jeez. So we have you. And what comes out of our own wallets, of course, as Tom will tell you in a bit. So thank you for your generosity, and thank you for your generosity in the future, because we're not quitting. We are not. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Thank you, Tom, for taking care of that and a lot more, too. Both you and Kelly, thank you. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on Twitter and other social media platforms, hopefully before showtime, but usually while it's already underway in the beginning clip. Oops! Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. A little bit of info about what's going on with Spreaker. We have thousands and thousands of hours of shows on Netroots Radio that we've done over the years, going on 11 years now. And migrating that to the Internet Archive is a task, especially when there's other aspects to be done, to keep the station going. So, we are not under our 500-hour limit yet in which we can post new pods onto Spreaker, but we're getting close, so bear with us. We'll be a few days behind, but they will be there, and like I said, it's a bit of a task. Yeah. Heavy lifting, actually, is what one might say it is. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of Reuters by Dan Whitcomb. A federal judge yesterday, Monday, barred the U.S. Department of Defense from punishing a group of Navy SEALs and other Special Forces members who refused COVID-19 vaccines on religious grounds. BS. There's no religious grounds for it. They're making it up. U.S. District Judge Reed O'Connor, yes, the Reed O'Connor that blocked the ACA, the Reed O'Connor who was put into his position by GW, the Reed O'Connor who is a upstanding and prominent member of the Federalist Society. There is a link in the show notes and links to a Guardian article giving you a little bit of background about this fellow when he was working hard and heavy and all the time to block everything Obama had. Why? You can't let the black guy look good. Just saying. Well, O'Connor, acting in response to a lawsuit filed on behalf of 35 Special Forces service members, issued a preliminary injunction blocking the Navy and Defense Department from enforcing the mandate. We're talking about military readiness, and this guy sounds to me like they're working for the Russians. I want to follow the rubles. If Putin and his crew corrupted the National Rifle Association, I want to know what they've done with the Federalist Society. I want to know what they've done with the Heritage Foundation. I want to know what they've done with the Family Research Council. I want to know what they've done with TSP USA. Turning Points. Or is it TP USA? That's what it is. Reed, who was appointed to the federal bench in Texas by GW, said the Navy had not granted a single religious exemption to the vaccine rule because they're making it up. The service members had faced a range of military discipline actions for refusing the vaccine. First Liberty Institute, a legal organization dedicated to making Joe look bad because they were so successful against Obama. Were they? He was elected twice. Defending U.S. freedoms, which represented the plaintiff service members, hailed the ruling as a victory. Forcing a service member to choose between their faith and serving their country is abhorrent to the Constitution and America's values. You know, these guys have no problem with slitting someone's throat or blowing a bunch of babies apart, from a mortar blast. They don't have any problem with that. They don't have a religious exemption from that. But vaccines, oh my God. God doesn't want us to have vaccines. Really? Tell that to the Catholic monks who developed them way back in the day. Before what you called the Dark Ages. The ruling marks the latest salvo in a string of legal fights over COVID-19 vaccine mandates ordered by President Joe Biden that have proven deeply controversial among conservatives. Controversial? They're a death cult. And their prime directive is to do anything it takes to make Joe look bad. Ben Fox of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. An internal review has been launched into the actions of a special Customs and Border Protection unit that used sensitive government databases intended to track terrorists, but instead investigated as many as 20 U.S.-based journalists, including one from the Associated Press. The review is focused on activities of the Counter Network Division, which under the administration of Donald Trump used the databases to investigate leaks to the media and to screen journalists as potential sources of information, as was detailed in a report by DHS's Office of the Inspector General. The purpose of the internal probe is to ensure that the activities in question during the prior administration remain an isolated incident and that proper safeguards are in place to prevent an incident like this from taking place in the future, CBP spokesperson Louis Miranda said yesterday, Monday. The review was initially reported by Yahoo News, which last month was also first to report on the OIG investigation, and we reported that report here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The AP obtained a redacted copy of the Inspector General report, which referred possible criminal charges for misusing government databases and lying to investigators to the Justice Department for a Border Patrol agent on temporary assignment with the Counter Network Division and 2 other Homeland Security employees. Prosecutors declined to prosecute. It's not publicly known whether the agent, Jeffrey Rambo, aptly named, or the other employees were subjected to any internal discipline. Customs did not provide details on the investigation, characterizing it as part of a broader effort by Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas and Commissioner Chris Magnus, who took up the position in December after serving as police chief in Tucson, Arizona, to ensure protection of First Amendment rights. The Inspector General report was sparked by after the Washington Post exposed Rambo and a leak investigation involving reporter Allie Watkins, who was with Politico at the time and now writes for the New York Times. In the course of its investigation, the Inspector General found that the Customs unit was using its vast databases to investigate others as well, including Huffington Post founder Arianna Huffington and AP investigative reporter Martha Mendoza. Rambo said he conducted CBP record checks on 15 to 20 national security reporters, according to an FBI summary. He said he had investigated Mendoza as part of an effort to vet her before trying to establish a relationship with her because of her expertise in writing about forced labor, an area of interest to Customs because it enforces trade laws. The revelation prompted a letter of protest in December from AP executive editor Julie Pace. This is a flagrant example of a federal agency using its power to examine the contacts of journalists, she wrote. While the actions detailed in the Inspector General's report occurred under a previous administration, the practices were described as routine. Marcia Dunn of the AP brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. NASA's new space telescope is on the verge of completing the riskiest part of its mission, unfolding and tightening a huge sunshade after ground controllers fixed a pair of problems, officials said yesterday, Monday. The tennis court-sized sunshield on the James Webb Space Telescope is now fully open and in the process of being stretched tight. The operation should be complete by tomorrow, Wednesday. The $10 billion telescope, the largest and most powerful astronomical observatory ever launched, rocketed away Christmas Day from French Guiana. Its sunshield and primary mirror had to be folded to fit into the European Ariane rocket. The sunshield is vital for keeping Webb's infrared sensing instruments at sub-zero temperatures as they scan the universe for the first stars and galaxies and examine the atmospheres of alien worlds for possible signs of life. Getting the sunshield extended last Friday was really a huge achievement for us, said project manager Bill Oakes. All 107 release pins open properly, but there have been a few obstacles. Flight controllers in Maryland had to reset Webb's solar panel to draw more power. The observatory, considered the successor to the aging Hubble Space Telescope, was never in any danger with a constant power flow, said Amy Lowe, a lead engineer for the telescope's prime contractor, Northrop Grumman. They also repointed the telescope to limit sunlight on 6 overheating motors. The motors cooled enough to begin securing the sunshield, a 3-day process that can be halted if problems crop up again. Webb should reach its destination 1 million miles away by the end of January. As of yesterday, the telescope was more than halfway there. The infrared telescope should begin observing the cosmos by the end of June, ultimately unveiling the first stars and galaxies formed in the universe 13.7 billion years ago. That's a mere 100 million years after the universe creating Big Bang. Launched in 1990, Hubble, which sees primarily visible light, has peered as far back as 13.4 billion years ago. Astronomers hope to close the gap with Webb, which is 100 times more powerful. It's another bit of good news, officials said, and they expect Webb to last well beyond the originally anticipated 10 years based on its fuel efficiency. Well, that brings us to our break, And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Salvador Dali had a peculiar way of refreshing his mind, something he called slumber with a key. In his 1948 book, 50 Secrets of Magic Craftsmanship, he described how it worked. "You must seat yourself in a bony armchair, preferably of Spanish style," he wrote. "In your left hand you were to clench a heavy key suspended above a plate. Then," he continued, "you will have merely to let yourself be progressively invaded by a serene afternoon sleep, like the spiritual drop of anisette of your soul rising in the cube of sugar of your body. As you drifted off, the key would slip from your fingers and clang on the plate, awakening you." He claimed the brief moment spent between wake and sleep would revive your physical and psychic being. And he cautioned that, quote, "a mere second is infinitely too long." Now, Dali's mystical-sounding method has been, to some degree, vindicated by science.
We show that the period between wake and sleep is actually very inspiring for creativity. And napping with an object in hand might help to tap her into this creative sweet spot.
Delphine Oudiette is a sleep researcher at the Paris Brain Institute. Since childhood, she's found it easy to slip into that zone between wake and sleep.
I try to sleep with a problem in mind and then just let the images come to me. And sometimes I have great ideas.
But she was curious to find out why. So she and her colleagues asked 103 volunteers to complete a series of math problems. Unbeknownst to the participants, there was a quick shortcut to solve all of them. 16 of the volunteers figured that out and were excluded from the rest of the study. The volunteers who didn't determine the secret were asked to emulate Dali's method, but pinching a plastic bottle with their fingertips rather than a key. Some took a Dali-style micronap, some napped longer, and others didn't nap at all. After the snooze, the researchers asked all the volunteers to do hundreds more of these math problems, and they found that volunteers who took micronaps were nearly 3 times as likely to figure out the problem-solving trick compared to those who didn't nap at all.
So that's a pretty massive result. We think that maybe in this phase you have the best of the two worlds, sleep and wake. So you lose the control of your thoughts. So you can have loose associations, make distant association between different memories, and that could be helpful for creativity. But at the same time, you still keep some awareness that might help you to recognize when you have a great idea.
Those who slept for longer periods actually did worse than both those who briefly slept and those who stayed awake. The results appear in the journal Science Advances. Oudiette says the next step of her work will involve repeating the experiment with other creative tasks beyond just math problems.
And to know more about the mechanism and maybe to try to teach people to reach this creative sweet spot.
As for Dali, well, in his book, he describes a variation of his method in which he instructs the reader to, quote, eat 3 dozen sea urchins, gathered on one of the last 2 days that precede the full moon. He specified that these sea urchins should be eaten preferably in the spring. May is a good month. Clearly, the great painter has left scientists with much more to investigate. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Can antibiotic medicines, long hailed as miracle drugs, be too much of a good thing? Yes. 2 factors are at work here. First, bacteria, one of the earliest forms of life on Earth, are miracles in their own right, with a stunning ability to outsmart the antibiotic drugs through rapid evolution. Second is the rather dull inclination of us supposedly superior humans to overuse and misuse antibiotic medicines. Every time we take an antibiotic to kill some bad bacteria that is infecting our bodies, a few of the infectious germs are naturally resistant to the drug. So they survive, multiply, and become a colony of superbugs that antibiotics can't touch. Multiply this colony by the jillions of doses prescribed for everything from deadly staph infections to the common cold, and we get the, quote, antibiotic paradox. The more we use them, the less effective they become, for they're creating a spreading epidemic of immune superbugs. A big cause of this is the push by drug companies to get patients and doctors to reach for antibiotics as a cure-all. For example, millions of doses a year are prescribed for children and adults who have common colds, flu, sore throats, etc. Nearly all of these infections are caused by viruses, which cannot be cured with antibiotics. Taking an antibiotic for a cold is as useless as taking a heart drug for heartburn. The antibiotics will do nothing for your cold, but it will help establish drug-resistant superbugs in your body. That's not a smart trade-off. This is Jim Hightower saying, in fact, it's incomprehensibly stupid. Antibiotics are invaluable medicines we need for serious, life-threatening illnesses, but squandering them on sore throats has already brought us to the brink of superbugs that are resistant to everything. That's the nightmare of all nightmares.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Thomas Jefferson said that his purpose in writing the Declaration of Independence was to express a shared understanding of the American mind. Over the course of a few days in June 1776, Jefferson laid out the most fundamental principles and central political beliefs of the American Revolution, and of the people the Revolution created. In stating that certain central propositions are self-evident truths, Jefferson expressed what amounted to a common political creed. The American creed has been commented upon by patriots and scholars ever since. In re-examining it today, you might realize that this American creed continues its role in providing cohesive force to a society not only divided by conflicting positions on controversial issues, but also united in seeking the fulfillment of its founding ideals. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. 2013 saw the end of what may have been the longest hotel strike in history. On Father's Day 2003, 130 workers from the Congress Hotel on Michigan Avenue in Chicago walked off the job. They were protesting a reduction in wages and the hotel's hiring of minimum wage subcontractors. For 10 years, the strikers, led by Unite Here, picketed the hotel. The hotel management remained unmoved. Unite Here quietly ended the strike, but that was not the longest strike in history. Not by a long shot. On this day in 1961, barbers' assistants in Copenhagen, Denmark, ended their strike. They had first walked off the job in 1928. And the Guinness Book of World Records has declared the strike the longest in recorded history. Every strike or work stoppage has its own character. A strike may be as short as just a portion of a day, or a strike may last for weeks, months, or years. Sometimes union members call strikes to last a specific amount of time, usually a few days. Other times, union members vote for an open-ended strike, with the duration uncertain. The tactic of a strike is one of the most extreme measures a union can take. Usually, a strike means that all other efforts to gain a fair contract have been exhausted. Long strikes have become less common in recent years. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there were only 15 major work stoppages in 2013. Of these, 2/3 lasted 3 days or less. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States, where it is currently 41 degrees Fahrenheit with a pretty heavy rain shower. We'll have periods of rain throughout the day. Winds will be light and variable, and we're expecting over a 1/3 of an inch today with steady rain tonight. Showers continuing late night. Winds light and variable. Lows in the low 40s. Expecting a 1/4 of an inch of rain, and then rain showers in the morning with a high near 50. What the heck? And then becoming a steady light rain in the afternoon. Winds light and variable, looking for a little less than a 1/4 of an inch, but we don't know, do we? Confirmed cases of coronavirus have increased once again. Oregon is seeing a terrible spike in both infections and deaths. We now stand at 272,013 people in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon, with an increase of 394 deceased. Pollen is rated as none here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 35 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is a winter low at level 2. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.17 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles, and relative humidity is at 99%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 39 and sunny. Paris is 50 degrees and cloudy. Rome is 58 and cloudy. Kyiv is 38 and fair. Kabul is 33 degrees with a light snow. Hong Kong is 63 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 38 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 74 degrees and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 52 with heavy fog. And New York, New York is 24 degrees Fahrenheit. but it's sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Staff at Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Gunmen unsuccessfully attempted to assassinate Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry during an event on Saturday commemorating the Caribbean country's independence. Henry's office said that bandits and terrorists had tried to shoot the Prime Minister at a church in the northern city of Gonaves, where the ceremony marking the 218th anniversary of independence was taking place. Video footage broadcast on social media showed Henry and his entourage scrambling toward their vehicles as an armed group began shooting outside the cathedral in Gonaves. Haitian media pointed to possible gang involvement in the shooting, which they said killed one person and injured two more. Gangs hold on parts of Haiti has strengthened since the assassination of President Jovenel Moise in July. Police who called Saturday's attack the work of armed groups was unable to immediately confirm casualties. Prior to the incident, a local gang boss had made threats against Henry in local media.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Andrew Meldrum and Gerald Imre of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A major fire ripped through South Africa's 138-year-old Parliament complex on Sunday, gutting offices and causing some ceilings to collapse at a site that has hosted some of the country's pivotal moments. As firefighters struggled to tame the blaze, a dark plume of smoke and flames rose high into the air above the southern city of Cape Town. Around 70 firefighters were still battling the fire hours after it started in the early morning. Cape Town's Fire and Rescue Service spokesman, Germaine Carles, said some were lifted up on a crane to spray water on the blaze from above. No injuries have been reported, and Parliament itself had been closed for the holidays. Officials said the fire started in the old Assembly building, which was built in 1884 and originally housed the South African Parliament, but now is used for offices. It spread to the newer National Assembly building built in the 80s, which is where the Parliament now sits. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme aux langues de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.